What's good, y'all? It's Jeff, and after 6 long years, we're finally back with... Wait, this ain't Super. Here we go with Dragon Ball Daima. This is the first Dragon Ball series I'm watching as it airs, which makes it extra special to me, although a bit nerve-wracking with this robust, diverse, and somewhat persnickety community. We are starting off with an introduction that feels almost cute. How many people watching this aren't familiar with this story? Unless maybe you're of the generation when the US skipped the original Dragon Ball. Whoops. Still, it is a welcome introduction to Son Goku and friends. It feels so cinematic, transporting you to a world more ominous than Hiffle. If Daima only has a couple dozen episodes, feels like we're gonna make them count. Similar to how this pair wants to number the Z-Fighters' days. Degasu here is the brother of the Supreme Kai, but I don't know if I see it. I do see their shock at Vegeta's redemption match and the subsequent events. In my humble opinion, we spend a bit too much time recapping Buu, what I assume a lot of people feel is Z's weak spot. Well, that and Chi-Chi. Jokes. So this is basically continuing straight after Z, not Super, whereby Goma, this little jester, becomes king of the demon realm by default. Side note, I thought the phrasing a Namek and not a Namekian was so funny. Like if someone pointed to me and said, "Is that in Ohio?" Oh, and then Vegeta blew himself up. Eventually, Shenron's back on the scene, which this less than intimidating pair is familiar with, but familiar as the Nameks know it. Man, those guys really gotta learn English. Watching these two is like watching a reaction video of a recap episode. But even still, we get a lot of background on them, like Degasu being millions of years old. Yet still, neither of them know anything about Saiyans. Must have been living under a space rock. Guess those are just called asteroids. As stoked as I am, I really was like this when we finally finished the rehash, which ended up leading these two to a dastardly conclusion. King Goma attained such high status without even lifting a finger. I mean, he's basically Haley Welch. But now, we may get to go where no Supreme Kai has gone before. Plus, the Kai family keeps expanding with a sister reveal. And she's a baddie, I suppose. Makes you wonder why Shen never brought these guys up, but they do seem estranged. I think Dr. Arenzu has the best energy of the group. You get the impression she's even playing the king, and that is not just because of the cocoa melons, but also in warning them that they better keep the money coming if they want any idea of how to survive a Goku storm. And that subtle threat definitely got under Goma's skin. But I'm curious about the blood. What relation does Goma have to Dabura to be a successor? His much wimpier successor. Much like about half of Dragon Ball villains, he wants to get his hands on those balls. And even though he has his own, he wants ours on Earth. Apparently the demon world also has Dragon Balls. Gets me really curious about what those wishes entail, and the possible side effects. I'm sure we'll find out eventually, but first, we're stopping on Earth. It's also all starting to make sense. They want to turn the group young to make them weak. Even though we all know Kid Goku was a menace. But this time around would be purposeful, unlike Pilaf's dumb little guffaw. From what I can tell so far, we're really trying to capture the comedy of OG Dragon Ball. And it is nice to have a series not take itself so seriously. In fact, turning everyone into kids practically ensures that. For wish number 2, we're looking at the evil third eye, the Tertian Oculus. Well, those words aren't in the Bible, but it seems something like a crown, which is supposed to grant a power boost. Interestingly enough, it's actually not something I think Goku or Vegeta would use. And wish number 3 remains a mystery, impossible for Degasu, who I do not think is switching up. They both seem pretty straightforward. Meanwhile, Goma's taken his new role seriously and is even about to start campaigning. He's even bringing a Namekian with him, meaning we'll get to uncover yet more about the Dragon Balls. Even after all this time, the lore continues. One thing this Dragon Ball episode accomplished was making me want to see Goku. Building suspense, very slow, for your main cast is a feat though for sure. Now get a load of these balls. The way they hover and have guards, I definitely want to know what they're capable of, which it looks like Neva can reveal, who I feel kindred with. Sluggish, almost senile, but I do shower more than once a year, so I got that going for me. There are just so many gorgeous backdrops, immersive like a pool, and there's even a fish. It feels very Dragon Ball for this to be one of our obstacles to the underworld. But to go outside, we need to go inside. Now of course, this episode is longer than standard, and I'll be honest, it felt like it. But I'm not sure if that was the hours of note-taking or just spending so much time with characters I'm not sure how invested I'll get in. At least Dr. Arenzu seems to have something up her cleavage. I could imagine her wishing for something project or money related. Relatable. At long last, we finally reunite with the group, and there's cause for celebration. Trunks is having a birthday, but also we all survived Boo. Nice.
それにしちゃ随分チビだな。
クリリンさんに言われたくないですよ。サイヤ人は15歳くらいで。
This is what I'm talking about. Mayumi Tanaka, Masako Nozawa, Ryu Horikawa all still sound so good, especially as Goku spouts some Saiyan trivia. I think Vegeta would have been proud if not for the backhanded observation. I know some Western fans have their opinions, but I just adore Nozawa. In pretty much every role, that isn't Bardock. But even then, the consistency. Also, it looks like Supreme Kai and Kibito snuck in. They've escaped being fused and accused of retcon by using the Boo method to split. All they needed was some mysterious gas. Once Goku's got his food baby and challenges Vegeta, my ears perked up like a dog who heard the words, "ride in the car." Since this episode has absolutely flexed its backgrounds, it's nice to see they're not slacking on the choreography either. It just feels classic. Kai Blast, fist flurries, and a spectacular beam struggle to bring us home. I mean, it's just fan service. Serving Vegeta before he even knew it. Also, seems the pair's got some spectators. A young Dende and Popo, who I could have sworn was blue. Suddenly, those spectators have some visitors drop in on them.
我々はDaima界から来たんですよ。
They're also dropping bombs, revealing to Dende his origins are of the demon world, which would of course make him somewhat kin to Demon King Piccolo. Gotta wonder how Piccolo will react to all this. Goma makes his demands, but before Dende can comply or even comprehend, Goma unleashes the confused creator of the demon world's Dragon Balls. I'll say one more time, it also feels very Dragon Ball to me to have one of the most unassuming characters have this remarkable power. A power that can not only locate, but even restore the Dragon Balls. Now the stakes feel high, as villains rarely ever obtain them this quickly. Dende's even willing to risk his life to protect the password, but unfortunately, he was already caught in 4K. Also, can't help but to feel Popo's been maybe a little nerfed. But what they're up against is crazy. I mean, these guys have hacks. Now that Shenron's arrived, the wishes are in motion. But this is a hilariously detailed dragon. The unfortunate part here is the already kids become babies, which is only a bummer because I have prayed every day of my life for Goten to be useful. I swear it's just a running gag at this point. But with that said, the trippy transformation ensues and the Z fighters are now Z children. Gotta say, of course it wasn't planned, but there's something almost poetic about this. Post the legendary Toriyama's passing, this episode reverts Goku back to the person that initially made nations adore him. This episode also felt very goofy to me, but with foreboding kernels. For example, I imagine the group having to take on these formidable looking guards, thereby defying Goma, who I also imagine is going to literally try to raise hell. Maybe he'll attempt to bring the demon world out as servants. A world I really do want to see more of, since the visuals of this series so far look fantastic, coupled with a score that I would say is pretty good too. Now that we're back with the main cast, this is really starting to feel like Dragon Ball, and that's got me hyped. For that, I give this episode an 8.